Welcome back to the Dad's Destined for Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Ian Brown. The last episode, we discussed a principle that I believe is essential for us to be great dads. That one was integrity. Before that one, we started off with our first principle, which was authenticity, basically being authentic, being our true selves. Today's principle has to do with transparency, alongside what I call damage control. When I say damage control, I'm speaking from a military perspective. Being in the military, in the Coast Guard, when we're out at sea, we are our own everything. We become self-sufficient. We are our own fire department, our own police for others, federal police regarding drugs, things like that. And we also are responsible for mitigating anything that pertains to flooding or anything that damages the ship. So when I refer to damage control, that's what we call it. We call it damage control. Once the ship has been damaged, you control it so the ship can continue on its mission or get to the closest port that we can get, with keeping the ship in a whole state. So that would mean the ship's flooding, controlling the flooding well enough to where we can get to the next place and get some additional help and fix up whatever's causing those leaks. So that's what I mean when I say damage control. Now, when I say transparency, transparent means being like, if you look at something that's transparent, what is it? It's see-through, it's clear, right? So as a dad and as men, you are called to be transparent, see-through, which means people should not be guessing who you are, what you stand for, where you stand on something. And when you discuss and communicate things, people should be clear on your stance on it. And so the reason why it has to do with being a father, how it impacts is, as a dad, of course, we have our wives, our significant others, and we also have our kids, right? Our kids and our wives may ask us questions that we know they're not ready to discuss due to lack of maturity or because it's a sensitive subject for them. Yet we're still called to answer clearly, transparently, but doing it in a way that is paired together with damage control. So remember how I said that damage control, you have flooding on the ship and you're trying to minimize and control the flooding. Well, I believe that also comes into the situation when you are communicating. I believe that we should be quick to hear and slow to speak. And so what that means is when you're telling somebody something clearly and transparently, you should also be doing it with damage control in mind in a way that is going to minimize the adverse impacts that it could have upon your wife and your children. And of course, we should be speaking like this in all walks of life. So, perfect example, we know from my last episode that a lot of people are walking on eggshells or treading on thin ice because of our political climate in the country. a lot of kids, wives, friends may ask you your take on something. By the answer you give, they will make an assumption on what political party you affiliate yourself with, which essentially is they will stereotype you, put you in a box, which is not okay, because I believe that we should be fluid with our political views. What that means is, for me, myself, I am a constitutionalist. Every time we have an election, I scrutinize everyone equally. And then based off that, then I have to make my decision. So when people ask me, oh, what's your stance on gay rights, for example, all right, I want to speak clearly and give my answer, but in a way that communicates that I am not trying to cause more damage to a already sensitive situation. All right, so what does that look like? What that looks like is me saying this, that I am personally for the rights of everyone, for civilly, for if people choose to live a lifestyle of same-sex marriage, same-sex relationships, just like all Americans have our freedom, they should be free to practice their lifestyles how they choose. That's one side of it. And here comes damage control. Second part is, however, though that may be true, and I fully agree that they should have the right to live their life the way they choose, just like everyone else, it comes with a clause, a caveat. And that caveat for me is, I will let them know, however, if you ask me like my personal take on the situation, I personally don't agree with that lifestyle. So when it comes to supporting anyone that lives that lifestyle, it'll be a very specific, focused support. And that support will simply be that making sure that they are not being discriminated against, harmed, that they don't have violence coming against them, and that they have the freedom to marry as they choose. That's about it. After that, when it comes to everything else, that's where my support pretty much ends. My take on the situation ends from that part on. Anything that you want the government to do to help you, I think that's something you got to figure out on your own, because in my belief that the government is not meant to meddle in the affairs of our everyday personal lives. Meaning, if I choose to live a certain way and I want to get certain things done in my body, things like that, if I have insurance and I'm paying for it, then of course my insurance should be able to pay for that. However, if my insurance does not pay that, it's not the government's job to provide that need for me by paying for or creating programs, federal programs, that will simply pay for me to get that done. So that's an example. You try to speak clearly, and let folks know that I usually try to start off that way, that I don't morally agree with that. However, I love my brethren and my sisters, um, of all walks of life. And I would never do anything that was going to add to their oppression. However, just like if I choose to make a business, that's my choice. And I have to take all the responsibilities that come with that choice and handle it on my own. Same way. Now, people might say, it's about human rights, or they may compare it to civil rights. And I'll tell you that this is where people disagree, and I understand that, like, for me being an African American man, a black man, right? I cannot control how my skin color when I came out the womb, which civil rights was about making sure that we were treated fairly and got the same opportunities as everyone else that we didn't get before because of our skin color. Now, when it comes to like lifestyles, that's something different. Your lifestyle is truly not a right. It's more of an entitlement. Anything to do with sexuality is all about it's an entitlement. In other words, like you're entitled to live that lifestyle. Um, However, it's not your right that everyone has to like support it. I may be not speaking clearly on this one, and forgive me if I'm not. But what I'm trying to get at is there's no comparison. Like a sexual preference, in my personal opinion, has nothing to do with human rights. Even though people are making that because we had a federal law that says that now. But just because we talked about this integrity thing yesterday, just because a law says that something um, is permissible, in other words, like it's able to happen, right, and it's protected, right? Cool, that protects you from any kind of hate, discrimination, thing like that. Which, like I said, I'm all for. However, that doesn't mean I gotta agree with it, and that doesn't mean that I have to lie to you about me agreeing with it. And I will tell you, just because you disagree with somebody does not mean that you hate them. Uh, a lot of people are saying that. A lot of people nowadays are saying that if you disagree with this or disagree with that, that you're closed-minded. Well, I came up with this own quote my own self. Basically, like anyone that says you're closed-minded because you disagree with them is in fact showing that they are closed-minded. We should all be able to disagree respectfully and walk away from the situation and still be able to interact with each other in a respectful manner. You're not going to change anybody's mind about anything. That's just the fact that I'm coming to learn. No matter how persuasive you are, people can just flat out say no because they're not ready to. Two, they don't want to, or three, they want to be spiteful, whatever the case is, we have to respect that. So my encouragement to you as dads is that you speak transparently on all topics of life, no matter how controversial, when your kids and your wife ask you your stance. This also goes into your views on education, things like that. I'm transparent with my kids. I tell them that it is important to get an education, specifically because you will need that in order to get a job, specifically work for an employee. The higher you go up in your education, the more likely you are to be hired as an employee to work somebody. And the higher education, you could possibly have more opportunities to make more money in the future. However, I also recognize with my mom, hadn't had been a teacher, that some of the things they teach our kids are just approved curriculum, that people's opinions on what we should be teaching, and some of them are useless. Some of these skills are useless. When I say that, like trigonometry, calculus, etc., like unless you're going to go into a science field and things like that, you're not using, or architecture, you're not using that in everyday life. The things that schools should be teaching, which unfortunately we know they're never going to teach, is teaching people about finances, because the majority of people don't know about finances, and that's why we are in the dire situations that we're in, where we have to rely on presidential candidates to try to help us out, to give us an edge. When in reality, if we knew these things ahead of time, you're being taught, it wouldn't matter. Like I've come to realize, I don't care who the president is. No matter who the president is, I'm gonna continue being successful. And so I tell my kids, yeah, you can be in school, of course, get good grades, and use that as your backup plan. That's your secondary goal. If all else fails, you can have that in your pocket. So apply yourself. But in reality, no, I encourage them to be entrepreneurs. That not to work for themselves and have other people work for them. Because the reason why is, I can tell you that you can't control how your bosses are, but you can control how you are. And so I know that if I, which I am going to create a business, if I create a business, I know how I'm going to treat people. I know I treat people with dignity and respect. I know I'm going to give them opportunities to progress, professionally develop, to personally develop. I'm going to give them resources so they can go to school on my company's dime, things like that, medical, health care, etc. Right? I know how I'll treat other people, but I can't control how other people treat this thing, right? So that's why I say, like, it's essential for those of us out there in society that have high integrity, have high moral standards, for us to become the business owners. So that way we can help push the country and lead people towards that financial freedom that they need. Because a lot of big corporations, they may have started off small with having great core values, but then along the way they became corrupted by making money a focus, and then that went out the window. So this is my brief personal perspectives, of take on things, on why as a dad it's important that you are transparent, so your family knows where you stand, and that you say it in a way that's, the truth may offend. The way I'll say it is, the truth may offend somebody just because it's the truth, but you don't have to add insult to injury. You can say it in a way that minimizes that sting. And I'll say real quick, like, truth is different than something being true. Something being true, can change. A few years ago, it was true that America was ahead of all these other countries financially. Right now, that is not true. Truth is something that stands the test of time, that doesn't move whatsoever. And so a good example of that is, it is truth that in this world you will have problems, you have trials, everybody will. That is the truth. That's going to happen no matter who you are. I love you guys. God bless, and until the next episode.